there are 1,000 reasons why Larissa and I should have failed by now. And those nights when you wake up in the middle of the night and 7,000 thoughts are running through your head and you're like, what am I doing? And I've never opened a bar. This is my first bar. Being smart, doing your due diligence is is the top thing. Do as much research as you can. Researching and listening to podcasts like this, understanding efficiencies, understanding protocols. If you don't do your research, you're dead.
Hello, and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. Before we get started, a quick thank you to our sponsors, Spot On, who provide a great modern POS solution for the bar and restaurant industry, and Starfish, who use AI to turn your books into actionable steps to increase profits. So I know we have a lot of listeners for the show that are in the industry. We also have a number of listeners on the show that are looking to get into the industry. And so something I wanted to start doing is to highlight the stories of people that have entered the industry, some without prior experience, because that's always when we talk about the highest instance of failure is getting in the bar industry and not knowing what you're doing, but have found success even though they didn't necessarily know what they were getting into. So joining us today is a great gentleman who has had this experience. Gregg Singer. He is the owner of the Golden Monkey Lounge in Glens Falls, New York. And Greg is an entrepreneur who has spent most of his time in real estate recently and ended up falling into a bar when he and his partner, Larissa Ovitt, purchased a building in Glens Falls in 2023 and then ended up opening the Golden Monkey Lounge. So welcome to the show, Greg. I am so excited to have you here to tell your story.
Well, thanks for having me.
So before we start talking about Golden Monkey, why don't you fill us in a little bit about how you fell into the bar business? Because I know this was not something you intended to do, but ended up getting into.
Well, in hindsight, I shouldn't have been working last night and then having an early morning interview. But that's the bar business.
It is.
We purchased a building in Glens Falls with the intent of creating short and midterm rental apartments upstairs. In the building were three retail spaces. One of them was an existing bar that was sort of defunct at the time. And in order for us to keep control of the building, control the noise, what was going on in the building for our tenants upstairs, we all of a sudden decided, hey, I guess we're opening a bar. And it was pretty much nothing more than that. We just decided, hey, we're going to open a bar. My business partner, Larissa, she and her family have had restaurants and other businesses that were in that world. So it wasn't completely new to her. I've worked in bars and restaurants, so it wasn't, completely new to me, except that owning was not something I knew. So yeah, it just sort of happened one night when we started working on the building after we bought it, that we were opening a bar.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense, especially because we've talked and I do a little real estate as well. And being able to control the volume when you, especially on something like short-term rentals, control how a business is affecting those rentals is really important for the short-term rental market.
Yes.
And so it makes sense why you would want to do that. Now, I know with Glens Falls, it's upstate New York. It's not a large city by any means, but you went with a little bit more of a contemporary kind of city type concept, a lounge concept, a little higher end than some other things that exist in that market. So, as you were looking at your building, your space, how did you think through the concept you wanted to put there?
Well, in my old life, I worked in advertising and marketing. So I have a little bit of an idea of what would work in certain markets. You have to have a niche. There were a ton of sports bars, just sort of your basic bars, and you can't go into a market and expect to do well with the same idea.
Right.
And me coming from Manhattan and knowing, hundreds of bars in Manhattan, what I liked and what I gravitated towards. And Larissa is actually from the area, but she's traveled extensively. So we both had a great understanding of bars and what we liked. And we sort of sat down and just decided, what is going to be the concept and what is going to bring people in? What is Glens Falls and Lake George, which is only 10 minutes away? What does that area need? What's missing? And the idea of a kind of cool elevated cocktail lounge kept rising to the top, and we figured that that was what the area needed. And soon after opening, people coming up to us and hugging us and telling us, thank you for bringing something new to the area. On top of all that, the block that we bought the building on was a redevelopment block. Used to be the Street of Dreams is what it was called, and it was restaurants and bars, and it was a happening street in Glens Falls. And we really wanted to bring that back. We were the first on the block to purchase and bring up a new idea. And it's right across from all this redevelopment that the city is doing, where they're creating a market center building, which is right across the street from us. So we wanted it to work with the town, and we had a lot of meetings with the city, and we had a lot of meetings with the mayor, the redevelopment people, and wanted to create something that was going to work with what they were envisioning the block to be. And they were super excited about what this concept was. They actually, when they did the ribbon cutting on the ground across the street, they actually had the party at our place on the day that we opened. It was not the best of days for us to have a ribbon cutting party on our opening night, but it was.
Oh, for sure. And that's building, because one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit later is community building inclusivity, because I know you guys have been real big on that as you've done things. But that's showing building community before you even have your concept fully formed,
Yes.
right? So you were going out, working with the city, meeting people, getting that groundwork, getting that face time with them as you're kind of innovating everything.
Yes. Larissa and I are big on due diligence, and you have to in order to be successful. So we did a lot of background work before even starting the development inside the bar. And that was, I think, very helpful in creating the success, because opening night was one of our biggest nights. People were
Sure.
so excited to see the place. Oh, it's something new, something's finally happening on South Street. The concept was also, you go to bars, there's 1,000 TVs, there's pool tables, there's darts. We wanted to create a social atmosphere, almost like what you would see at the local, a pub, a place where people come to meet and come together and mingle. And so we don't have a lot of distractions at the Golden Monkey. It's all about socializing. We have board games and stuff on the tables and cards, you know. And it's really set up for the community to really enjoy coming together.
Before we dive into opening and all that, let's talk a little bit more on pre-opening, because I'm just curious about this, because you come from a real estate background. So you're familiar with renovations, building codes, all of that. But I know a lot of folks when they get into hospitality, especially when they're doing a build out on a bar if they've never done one before, they run into a lot of small little issues they didn't anticipate, whether it's fire code or health code or these little code compliance things that always tend to pop up. Did anything surprise you coming from real estate and getting into hospitality in kind of that build out and the process of getting to opening?
Not to toot my horn too much, but there weren't a lot of surprises because of what you just said. I'm used to what code, it's different in
Yeah.
every town and city. The only thing that really hampered us opening was the fire department. And
Hmm.
it really had to do with the work that we were doing on the building and not actually on the Golden Monkey. We were putting in a sprinkler system, which is a fairly intense process of running pipes through the entire building, digging out the street in front of the building and connecting to the water line. So there were a lot of issues with this whole system, and the fire department didn't really want us opening the Golden Monkey until we were done with that. Even though the building had been previously working as a bar, but they wanted us to be up to code. So it took a little finagling for us to get sort of a temporary opening. And then by the time we actually opened, the sprinkler system was in place and working. So that was really the only thing that kind of surprised me. I mean, there's a million permits that you have to get. You know, our liquor license, we actually went through a consultant, and that was super smooth because we went through a consultant. And again, you do your due diligence. You hear these stories about people trying to do it themselves, and then 9 months later, they still don't have even a temporary license. So we were smart about going through and working with a consultant to get our liquor license in the state of New York, which they make it difficult for good reason.
It's funny because I find fire code on one hand is one of the easiest inspections compliance pieces, but on the other hand, when you're getting ready to open, it's one of the most difficult
Yes, yes,
because they get very specific about very specific things. And to your point, it's all code. As long as you know the code and follow it, you're all right. But I don't know very many fire marshals that are terribly forgiving on
no,
any parts of their code.
no, no, and they pretty much have carte blanche of being able to say or require whatever they want, which again is a fantastic thing, and they should have this control, but it makes it very difficult to get things going. The only other thing that we have a hood in our kitchen because we have a small kitchen. We do shareable plates, and that was one of the only other things that was, we had to get it. It hadn't been used in a while. The Ansel system had to be, redone, and that took a little bit of work just to get that cleaned up and working. But luckily, we didn't have to replace it because then again, new code requires a lot more systems in place.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that fire suppression systems in kitchens are amazingly expensive. I've
Yes.
always found. Every time I have to do something with one, and I look at the bill, I go, "Oh my god, this is crazy."
Yeah, and that was really one of the few things that we did not throw out when we were redoing all the systems, the bar and the kitchen. Pretty much we kept the sink and the Ansel system. Everything else had to go.
Those are good things to keep. So that gets you to opening, and you open in October of 2023. From talking to you before, I know initially you guys had some everything was banging, like you see in a lot of bars when they first open, because there's all that interest.
Yes.
But then you got into 2024, and as most people listening to this show know, because we've talked about benchmarking and data plenty of times, 2024 was not particularly kind to bars. We
No.
saw a slump in sales throughout the entire year, where it just kind of got worse and worse quarter to quarter. So, what was that opening phase like? The kind of honeymoon? What was it like falling out of that honeymoon? And then how did you have to innovate and pivot to stay successful?
Well, yeah, we opened end of October. We had really wanted to open in July, but some things held us up a little bit, so we opened at the end of October, and we were really happy with the way that everything looked. And we were excited. Again, the city had their big groundbreaking ceremony with us. The day that we were opening, they said, "Hey, 3 to 5," and I said, "Sure, let's just do this." And so we had 50 people run across because it started raining, and had 50 people just all of a sudden in the bar ordering drinks and everything. And it was fantastic. Toast system went down. Everybody was just trying to juggle things as much as they could. We weren't really super staffed because we were, you just aren't at the beginning. Not everybody knew what they were doing. And it was great. We had a great night. I couldn't have been happier. Everybody was super excited. People were coming up to Larissa and me saying, "Thank you so much. This is phenomenal. This place looks amazing. Love the vibe." And this went through for about 2.5 months. And I thought, wow, we just hit it out of the park. If this is the way it's going to be and it can only grow from here, fantastic. Like what a success. And then around the end of January, it started to tip off. And upstate New York, worst time of the year, negative temperatures, 0 degrees out, it's icy. Nobody really wants to go out. You stay in your cave. So I thought, oh, it's just the slump of winter. We'll get through this. February was an abysmal month. Just wondering, okay, it's just the weather. March hit and not much better. April hit, not much better. And as you said, then we start seeing numbers, we start hearing things. And it was really due when I would ask some of our regulars, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while," they would say, "Oh, we're kind of cutting back. Money's a bit tight these days." And that's how it went through 2024. And so what we had to do was get more efficient. And this was not a great thing when you first start out to have this happen. You kind of want your efficiencies to sort of happen organically, and we had to force it. So it's an upscale cocktail lounge. So we have a lot of the great liquors, a lot of great syrups. We make all our syrups, in house. We have a lot of fruit. We juice our own fruit. So we had to tighten everything up, and we had to tighten up our staff, and we had to tighten up whatever we could. And we just made it more efficient and sort of plodded through. And then summer came, and that's when it picked up again. And we started to see a little bit of a rise in June, July, and August, which again, upstate New York, everybody loves, it's beautiful weather. We have a patio. We opened up our patio, and people loved the patio. I built out pallet, furniture and walls and stuff, and made it kind of interesting. And we had plants and flowers. And so we brought, you try to bring people in for purpose, like they want to go out for a reason. They want to have entertainment. So we started having some events, DJ events. We started trying to get creative on bringing people in, movie nights, you know, uh, bartender challenge, things that kind of bring people in because they're like, oh, wonder what that's about. And then by early fall, September, October, it started to pick up, and we've seen a rise. I mean, obviously we're into April at this point, which is stunning that we're past winter, but through the winter we started to see much better months. So coming out of 20 this horrible 20 into 2025, we've seen much bigger gain going into 2025, and we've had a lot more events. So like that's the thing that we know we have to do, because every time we would have an event, we had a silent disco. People hadn't ever heard or seen a silent disco and loved it. And so having those things happening at the bar are bringing people in, and then they'll come in also on off nights where there isn't an event. And live music. So last night we had some live music, and so creating these things, keeping it efficient, um, sticking with, like you were saying before, building this community. Larissa is a local to this area, so she's really involved in the events and things happening. I'm not. I'm an outsider. I'm from Manhattan area. I, you know, I'm a transplant. 7 years ago, so I don't really know that many people. They know me from the bar, but so keeping this community connection and letting people know that we're still part of what's going on South Street, and really pushing to build what the city really wants to happen there. And it really comes down to entrepreneurs and private business is what creates that stuff. The city can't do it all. We have a building next door that was a derelict building, this huge building next to us. It's finally being redeveloped. Now South Street is becoming this thing. It's this rebirth of South Street, and people know that we were part of the beginning of that, and they're coming in because of it.
And let's dive in a little more there because I think it's great because the two things I love to talk about are community and efficiency, right? And pivoting and making business more efficient because I don't think you can have a bar and survive without being as efficient as possible all of the time if you want to make decent money. But that's interesting on the numbers end. But The community end is how you keep those folks coming in, right? It's how you build this culture that pulls people towards you. So I know that you guys have done a lot with inclusivity. And when we talked before, I think something we both kind of had experience with, and from my bar experience, like I had a bar that was known for being inclusive, but it's basically because I didn't care. Right? It's kind of a backwards thing sometimes where it's not caring about who comes in and just being nice to people
Yes.
builds this community and inclusivity that other people don't get in their establishments. So tell us a little bit about that, how you've really tried to foster that community and build inclusivity into what you're doing.
It's funny because I was just talking to one of our patrons last night about it because we just had a last week we had a drag show, and it was two different pride organizations that came together and created a drag show at our place. And we were talking about that last night, that you don't want to get pigeonholed into becoming a certain type of bar, whatever it is. Like you were just saying, it's an all inclusive. And I agree with that. I think that people should just be nice. People should be happy and enjoy themselves and shouldn't really worry about what other people are doing or what other people think. And we decided early on that we wanted to be a safe space because there are not that many safe spaces, especially here. And so we decided that early on we were going to do that. And in keeping open and not caring about who and what people are, we sort of evolved into a safe space that people really enjoy. We have a lot of pride events, and we have, like I just said, we had a drag show, and we've become a safe space for the pride community. And I'm really proud of that. I think that it's very important to be inclusive and to keep people safe and to create a space that people want to come to because they know that they're included and not going to be harassed. And that's what we created. And I agree with you. There is a component to sort of not caring, not caring about what people do or say, as long as they're nice, as long as they're kind. And I'm a big proponent of that. And coming from Manhattan, where there's a mix of everything in the world, every person in the world is in Manhattan. And I grew up with that, and it just became sort of second nature to me that, you know, who cares what anybody, wants to be or does? That's their choice, and I'm okay with it. And that's sort of what we've done, and people really seem to appreciate it at the Monkey. And I'm very proud of what we've created. And sometimes we don't get great comments online, and I don't care.
Well, and you and I talked about that some too before. I mean, it is very true. If you have an inclusive space, if you don't care who comes in, eventually you get some of everybody, and then that means that there's some of everybody on the extreme sides of every group in the world that will look at you and go, "Oh my God, why do you let this group in? Why are you okay with these people?"
Exactly.
And so I know you've had some experience. How have you balanced that when you've come across those issues?
I've had a few people who have been a little obnoxious, we'll say,
Hmm.
and I just basically I don't engage in it. I tell them that I don't really appreciate those comments or how you're saying things, and if you don't like it, there are many other bars in town.
Yeah.
You don't need to come to the Golden Monkey. And it seems to work. Nothing has escalated so far, and they finish up and they leave. And if that's what, those people want to be that way, they're not gonna be that way at the Golden Monkey.
Yeah. And I think that's the approach I've always taken, and it's the approach I love because it's really easy to look at somebody and just be like, you know what, dude, you can be racist, you can be sexist, you can be homophobic, you can think, you can be a misogynist, you can be a misandrist. Like I don't care what side of anything you fall on, just don't do it here.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Eh,
We don't like it here and we don't want it here. And you can
right,
finish up and pay and leave.
right. And it's so simple, but it's something um, I think is really hard for a lot of people to do, and it's really hard to build that inclusive environment, even though on one hand it's so simple.
And we're very open with our staff about it as well. We have a lot of young staff who are, sometimes not used to dealing with this element. And I basically tell them, you don't have to. I'll deal with it. Larissa will deal with it. Our manager will deal with it. Sexual harassment, you know, has come up as well. And I said that to them, there is zero tolerance to any of it. You immediately walk away. We're fine with you telling them that's not appropriate. I don't appreciate this. Please stop. And if they don't, and you don't want to deal with that, come to one of us. And I'm okay again dealing with somebody who's going to be obnoxious and sexist, or whatever kind of harassment's going on. I don't mind dealing with it. And eh, there's no reason for it. Uh, you know, especially at our place. It doesn't. It's not tolerated at all.
One, I think it's good just to have places that are returning to the concept of polite society in a lot of ways.
Exactly.
But with that, Greg, our time is almost up for the day. Is there anything else you would like to add to the conversation that we have not hit on so far?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we didn't talk about was something that you and I had discussed earlier was that there are 1,000 reasons why Larissa and I should have failed by now. And those nights when you wake up in the middle of the night and 7,000 thoughts are running through your head and you're like, what am I doing? The again, I've never opened a bar. This is my first bar. However, I've been a business person for a long time. I was in advertising, I was in manufacturing for a while. I've and now I'm in real estate development. Um, y- you know, being smart, doing your due diligence is is the top thing. Do as much research as you can. From designing the back bar, the kitchen, I personally built out almost everything in the Golden Monkey, my own hands. I think there's something to be said for that because I know every system and every problem that can happen down to the toast, POS system. When something goes down and I'm there, we can work on it. Otherwise, you're in deep shit. I think that knowing and researching and listening to podcasts like this, understanding efficiencies, understanding protocols, if you don't do your research, you're dead. And that's paramount to being able to continue in your business. And every day you have to continue doing that. It's not something that you can just do all of it up front and then you're good to go. You have to evolve every single day. And if you don't, it's not going to work. And maybe even if you do, it's not going to work. You just don't know. And that's part of the excitement of owning a bar is that there's a million things that can happen. And I think it's great to have someone like you who is putting all this information out to keep people on their toes. And understanding what you need to be doing and doing it.
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. Now, I'm sure some people listening are also thinking, okay, Greg sounds like a cool dude. I want to check out this Golden Monkey place. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you and to learn more about the Golden Monkey?
Really, just going to our website or going to Facebook or Instagram are the best ways to get to us. There's an email at the bottom of our website, so people, if they wanted to reach out, can reach out to me. That's pretty much the best way, and or stopping in.
Perfect. Well, we will put a link to the website, the Facebook, and the Instagram in the show notes. So if you're listening and want to learn more, you can just scroll down and click on those links there. But with that, Greg, thank you so much for being here. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I wish you the best of luck with the Golden Monkey as you go forward.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.